Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and it looks like we got some big beautiful buzz for Legion Remix, an upcoming feature for the next major content update of 11.2.5. As part of the power progression of previous remix experiences like Mop Remix, it gave players an opportunity to create some of the strongest players out there. In fact, players could become absolutely godly with some effort and a lot of bronze in order to power up every one of your gear pieces. Legion Remix power gains, however, in comparison, so far in the PTR, have felt restrained and contained to some degree until now, where Blizzard has actually given us a bit of a taste as to just how powerful we'll be able to make some of our classes in the Legion Remix expansion, and it's looking super good. If you ever wanted to absolutely break the game with some of the strongest builds out there and absolutely dominate an open world content as well as dungeons and raids, then you'll definitely will be able to do so in Legion Remix, though with some grinding involved for sure. But at least they are looking to supercharge this experience with a variety of buffs, which I really want to take a closer look at today, going over all of the different features that they buffed up all across the board, and overall give you some of my takes as to how it feels to play it over on the PTR realms. With that being said, as always, if you guys want to keep up with the regular updates regarding War Within or future updates such as Legion Remix in 11.2.5 or potentially Midnight Alpha, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So it looks like they finally figured out how to do scaling for Legion Remix properly, with many players hoping to find a way to eventually, as you play, Legion Remix, very similar to Mop Remix, where it eventually can make a character like truly overpowered, actually godlike. In Legion, it felt like they were just, meandering with that, putting limitations on it. And it looks like they finally found a way to possibly make our characters the strongest, and we actually get a taste of it right now over on the PTR. First of all, one of the changes they're making in order to make our characters even better overall is, in the blue post it reads, all phases up to Argus Eternal phase will now share the Argus Eternal item level cap of 740. So from what this sounds like is the item level is being raised to 740 immediately. Previously, they wanted to kind of incrementally increase the item level of gear as we get into further phases in Legion Remix. And the way that we're going to run the content for Legion Remix is it's going to come out like in phases very similar to classic phasing, as in the first phase you will have the first raid and a couple of instances and some of the early open world content. Then in the next phase there'll be new raid, a new zone, some new dungeons, and then third phase and fourth phase, very similar to how Legion came out with its like seasons and patch cycles. They wanted to simulate that, but it looks like the gear, you'll be able to get some of the best gear immediately. So if you're looking for the strongest gear right now, it is no longer going to be time gated behind the final phase from what it sounds like, but it's going to be made available immediately. If you're trying to do some of the hardest content out there and are looking for the best gear, you'll be able to get it early on and won't have to re-gear your character with every single phase, which is going to be quite awesome, especially for those players that are huge and to grind out a character as early as possible. Another change they made is to the actual weapon scaling. Once you choose your pathway, whether you choose like the Nature, Fel, Arcane, Storm, or Holy, and you upgrade your weapon all the way through, you eventually can put points into Limits Unbound trait, which you can invest into. Look like infinitely, but it looks like there is now a limit of 999, but they added so that this Limits Unbound trait that you can keep putting points into not only increases your intellect and stamina, which makes your character super tanky and hard-hitting, but it now also increases your character's versatility stat by 1% per point, which results in some really wacky numbers of up to 99% versatility, where you're dealing up to what looks like 1,000 damage and decrease your damage taken by like 500%. So yeah, it is going to be one of those stats that will be contributing towards making your character stronger, but also more powerful and more godlike as you put more points into it. With this, they also did remove versatility from all the other pieces of gear. They now have haste, mastery, and critical strike. So you can now just juice up your character with the best of the best stat that you're looking for. Versatility has never really been an exciting stat, though for some classes it is their best stat for damage. But that being said, it is not the most exciting stat, so they allowed mastery, crit, and haste to shine, allowing you to really fully customize it. And what you can do is like fully invest into gear with, fully crit or fully mastery or fully haste, but that, you'll be able to find that as you play the game organically within Legion Remix. However, when it comes to those secondary stats while we're at it, they actually also changed the way that secondary stats work for Legion Remix. Normally, when you're playing in content like, let's say, Season 3 of War Within on the live realms, normally there's a diminishing returns when it comes to stacking a certain amount of stats. Up until a certain threshold, you get full value out of those stats. But past a certain threshold, whatever Blizzard decides, you do get reductions. So like, investing points into mastery, critical strike, versatility, you just don't get nearly as much bang for your buck. And those diminished returns allows you to basically diversify your secondary stats a little bit when it comes to live realms, but it also means that certain of these secondary stats never really get like too out of control. However, for Legion Remix, it looks like they are unshackling them completely, so they're removing any diminishing returns on those stats whatsoever. So now if you want to stack full crit, you can reach 100% pretty easily. If you want to go Giga Haste, you can just go like immediately full on Haste, or even Giga Mastery, there won't be any diminishing returns there. There's also no caps on those stats either, so for classes that are, let's say, casters with haste stat, there is actually a hidden haste cap in the game. And the way to find the cap is, let's say you get enough haste, your casting speeds for spells become quicker and quicker, but they never become instant because there's a cap. You can only get them so fast, but you can't really make them instantaneous on live realms. But Legion Remix is changing the script, and there's going to be no caps on that front either. So if you want to heavily invest into Mastery, Critical Strike, or Haste, you are more than welcome to do so, as long as you get the right gear, because, most items will have like dual stats to it, a little bit of Haste, a little bit Mastery, but certain items will just have like more into one singular stat. So if you want to reach 100% chance to crit, you could do that. If you want to go Giga Haste, you can do that. Giga Mastery, you can do so. And you always get versatility on top of it, which comes from your artifact weapon. So that's going to be a huge way the players are going to be able to fully make a broken character when it comes to fully gearing out when it comes to Legion Remix. However, we're not even done there, as they continue to increase the rate at which you'll be able to gain infinite power with the newest build, increasing the infinite power gains by 25%. So you're going to be able to gain a lot more power quicker to fill out your weapon the first time around and start putting points into the Limits Unbound trade, which is super, super nice, which in the last few builds, they actually made it so this trait used to also have some diminishing returns, where the more points you put into it, the less you got over time. That has been removed, so now you get full value for every single point, and with this thing going up to 999, it allows you to make an extremely powerful character. They also wanted to increase the rate at which you earn high rarity epoch mementos from caches of infinite treasure, dungeon bosses, and raid bosses. Those are items that allow you to fuel up your infinite power, specifically the experience gain component out of it. There's a couple of different ways for you to be able to increase your rate at which you gain experience within Legion Remix. One of them being completing the main storylines and quest lines and chapter quest lines of each zone, which gives you like 20% per. Leveling to hitting level 40 and level 80 also allows you to get a global buff for all of your alls, which is a Warbound bonus. But now you also will be able to get additional chances for those XP gains, which are usually at 1% per epoch, but it still is going to give you a lot better chances for you to be able to increase the experience rate for all of your ults once you get a main fully stocked up and ready to go, which is going to be really, really good for any of you looking to level multiple characters come Legion Remix. Another aspect of Remix they buffed up in order to make our characters stronger are the Time Warp obelisks. These are the obelisks that you can find out in the open world, usually after slaying certain random enemies, whether it's elites, rares, or just even normal mobs could drop these obelisks, and they help power up your character in order to make you even stronger. They're great for questing, but they're also really good for if you do open world content in Heroic Raid tier, where Heroic World tier enemies are going to be tougher, they're going to be a little scarier, and this obelisk can help you deal with a lot of the challenges much, much easier. Very similar to obelisks in Diablo, they wanted to buff them up a little further by increasing the duration of most of them, from Offering of the Void getting 30 seconds longer duration for the buff, Offering of the Pact getting 150-second longer duration, Offering of the Assassin lasting 1 minute longer, and Offering of Swiftness lasting 90 seconds longer. One of those obelisks, by the way, the one that summons the Fel Trickster, that damage for those Fel Tricksters have also been buffed up by 33%. So they're trying to equalize all the obelisks in value, and Fel Trickster was a bit behind, but now it sounds like that thing can potentially even solo certain rares and elite enemy packs all by itself, so it's actually quite an awesome pickup. They also reduce the health of many of the quest mobs and rares within the Heroic World tier by up to 40%. What a lot of players found when playing Legion Remix is once you get your character to this literally unbreakable level, once you start to really power up your character, a lot of the content in the open world, like from the rares and some of the quest bosses, they're not necessarily difficult because you could dodge them, you can avoid them, you have more than enough health to survive their attacks, but you may not have enough power to just one-shot them. And a lot of the times with how much extra health they have, it just is something that prolongs the encounter without necessarily making it more engaging. So you're just fighting a rare for a very, very long time until eventually it dies. But yeah, they lasted a little bit too long. They felt like the duration of like a world boss for every single one of them. So them reducing the health and those things just means you're going to be killing them a little bit quicker, which is super, super nice. I think it won't really matter too much if you're doing them as a group, since they do scale up with health as more players attack them, but it does allow you to get through them very, very quickly, so it no longer feels like you're just constantly hitting a loot pinata for way too long of a time, which is just a nice overall quality of life change. They also changes so several achievements that you earned from Legion Remix are now going to be account wide, which makes me wonder if this is actually a benefit to you or if it's a loss in some way. Either way, many of the achievements are now, instead of being character specific, are account wide. I think maybe to promote more warband play on all alts, instead of having to, complete certain achievements on one character, then complete them on another, and then having repeating achievements to complete on multiple characters in a row. Besides this, also, they've got some generic stuff like many bug fixes. I don't really know the details of it, but the servers do feel, at least in PTR, a little bit more stable. A lot of the abilities do actually work properly. Secondary stats seem to be actually functioning right now as they weren't for earlier in the week for a short bit of time. So it looks like things are somewhat functional, although I wouldn't be surprised whenever Legion Remix releases, it'll probably be buggy because it is a pretty big overhaul to a game mode within WoW. I'll be very surprised if it comes out and everything works 100% from the start. We've seen Blizzard put out new content and new builds, and usually someone slips past PTR, but it feels surprisingly well put together, at least at this moment. But I do wonder how it's going to feel towards the actual release of this new content. But with that, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy this update or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also, be sure to join our Discord community for any future major updates regarding Legion Remix or potentially Midnight Alpha. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.